Hello and welcome to my review of Season 50 of Survivor. I've been a lifelong fan, raised on the show, really only taking a break from watching during 41 through 44, but I've gotten back into it and I love this show. A bad season of Survivor still makes a good season of TV. In fact, I don't watch narrative TV because movies are just better and fit my needs more. You can see that all over my channel, but there really isn't anything else like Survivor out there. None of the other similar competition shows stand up to it. Some Big Brother is great, but stuff like Deal or No Deal Island, The Snake, or Amazing Race don't hit the same. The format is perfect. The only other show that comes close is The Challenge, but they're so different it's hard to compare. So Survivor is my favorite show. But I will be negative during this review a decent amount. If you don't care about the specifics and want a general review, it was a fine enough time, I guess. You could do a lot worse. But I'm going to be harsh because it could have and should have been so much better. They hyped this up as a season for the ages, one for the fans, a celebration of the show's history and the best yet. I don't believe they fulfilled this promise, especially to a fan like me. Instead, the season was a frustrating watch with some high points. Survivor is at its peak when large, fun characters are playing an interesting game, where the power dynamics are constantly shifting and the focus is on the people playing. I think the show has lost faith in that thesis and started to deviate. First, I want to talk about the cast because that's what the core of a great season is, especially one with returnees. Going in, I was excited for a decent chunk of the cast and think it was a solid group overall. I definitely think I could have punched it up, but everyone is going to assume that. Most of the people I didn't love on the show, I could understand why they were brought back. Chrissy, Joe, Colby, Jonathan, and Jenna all have reasons to be here, so I can't hate their inclusion. Jonathan is the perfect example of that. I never found him likable, but you kind of have to bring him back as this big challenge player who had a strategic undercurrent. Such a big player and personality in his original season, he should come back. One of my favorite things to do is fantasy cast a Survivor season. Imagine what could have been or what will be. So I'll be going through the 6 swaps I would have made to the Season 50 cast. This is mostly looking back on my pre-season feelings and does not take into account what I saw out of them in 50 with one exception. First off, I'd take Ozzy off this cast, one of the least engaging players and characters in the show's history, especially for how many times he's been brought back. I have never cared for him, a boring bad player who has not learned or evolved at all. I understand he's an icon, but get a personality. Second is Stephanie. Do I need to explain this one? Her politics and public anti-Semitism does not belong on a TV show. I'd get rid of Mike White. I was so mad when I saw he was on the cast. There are so many people who would make the most of this, but we got Mike because he is uber successful. Rolled my eyes at everything involving him and his entitlement. Then I'd also boot Aubrey. I was never a huge fan of her, but Edge of Extinction really soured me on her. I had zero desire to see her play again. This is the cast member I was most wrong about. Then, based on what I did see in 50, I'd take Charlie off. He was just boring and obsessed with the smallest thing ever. I hate just how bitter he was, and not in a fun or entertaining way. Lastly, one of Joe or Camilla should have been taken off this cast. Having 3 out of 4 from the endgame of season 48 was a weird choice. Just save Camilla for another season down the road. I think her return would have been a bigger deal if it wasn't next to Kyle and Joe. I can understand why they cast Joe, and would default to keeping him if I had to keep one of the two. Now, who would I add? Malcolm and Kelly Wentworth are easy swaps for Ozzy and Aubrey. Malcolm has a personality and fills that golden boy role. I just love Wentworth. Similar-ish to Aubrey, they played together for a season, had their debuts and second play around the same time. For some new era people, I would love to see again. Omar and Shan feel like they should have had a spot. Not to bring Shan back, he's leaving entertaining chaos on the table. Then Dom also needs to come back, and lastly, Abby Maria. That's the 6 people I would have put on this cast to make it feel that much better. Alts, who I would question if they would even be up for it, and just slightly prefer those cast. Lex, Tina, Sugar, Caleb from 45, Penner, and Sierra Easton. There was a lot of outrage around certain people not being on the cast that I just couldn't care less about. I have zero need for Amanda, Rob C, Carolyn, Andy, Davey, or Marianne on this cast specifically. I could definitely see those last 3 coming back, but I don't think it makes sense for them to do it on this one. Enough rambling about what should have been, I get to talk about the actual season now. What made this as frustrating as it was? A lot, to be honest, but the first is the start of the season. I hate this boot list, and it put a stink around everything. The 8 players I was most excited to see were Sari, Kyle, Genevieve, Q, Savannah, Christian, D, and Coach. 4 of them were out in the first third of the game. That first episode where Kyle got pulled from the game was draining. Medevacs always suck, but I'm a Kyle supporter through and through. One of the most dominant games ever in 48 and looked to position himself great. Kyle leaving in this way took a lot of my energy out of the season very early on. Similarly, Savannah. I'm a big supporter of hers and fan. She never really stood a chance on this one due to having won an unseen season. But for her to go out so soon sucked. I wanted to see these winners get in there and play the game some. I would love to see her back in some time, or if Australian Survivor does another versus the world season, Savannah would be one of 3 US representatives if I had the choice. Then there is Q, my love. I have not seen season 48 yet, but I still love Q. I did watch him on my friend Matthew's show, Zoom Traders, and he was just amazing. He's so funny. Q made the most of his time on 50 and brought an energy nobody else did. Was he the best game player? No, but I don't care. His antics were peak. He was the most fun player. Some people's raw entertainment power makes up for them not being the best player. Then Genevieve. I love her so much, and she was so screwed. Found 2 idols she wasn't allowed to keep, then put in a mini vote with 3 people who were never voting each other. I really hope she gets to come back. Dee didn't get a ton of screen time, Christian was screwed. Out of my top 8, I was excited to see the only people who really got to show off were Suri and Coach. The pre-merge did have some great threads going and entertaining moments, even if there was a string of rough boots. Colby and Rizzo were cute together, I really liked that pairing. Christian shitting himself, Emily refusing to keep a secret, Coach being crazy, Rick versus Joe, Ozzy versus Coach, the D Camilla Tiffany alliance. On the micro scale, there was a lot of interesting stuff going on, but it never came together and most of this hardly affected the later stages of the game. The merge onward was pretty boring game-wise, and it felt so lame. The game state was stale. Every vote felt like it made sense for most people. Yeah, vote off Coach and Chrissy because they're a tight alliance. Of course you have to vote for Rick and Suri. They were the only ones left playing hard. There was no great, interesting gameplay going on. It felt like people were set in their ways pretty early on in the season and didn't really question trying to make a move for themselves. It was all done by group consensus. The most interesting gameplay of the season was Q and his nonsense, the 3-2-1 pre-merge split, and bluffing Ozzy. Like, come on, that's lame as hell for your most interesting gameplay to be pre-merge, and Ozzy not using an idol for the second time? Dude is so prideful and cocky, it didn't even come off as great gameplay. He was just dumb as hell. Why was it like this? The show kept getting in its own way. They didn't let the players play due to twists, which I will get onto soon, but also the day count. I am not a new era hater, and I don't think the show has been consistently worse. One complaint I see all the time is about the 26 days and how it's inferior, and I just couldn't care less about it most of the time. In my opinion, it's the worst take I see consistently online. It has such a small effect on my watching I don't care, but here, I felt that small amount of days. Adding another 6 players to the shortened day doesn't leave enough time to play the game. In a 26-day season, there are 624 hours total. Let's assume 8 of those are sleeping each day, down to 416. Then we have 21 vote outs. They did 3 in one day and then 2 in a different, so 18 days where you have an immunity challenge and a vote off. Tribal itself lasts an hour or 2. Challenges can take up to an hour. Then there is travel to and from these places, which I'll add another hour to. On the conservative side, 3.5 hours for tribal and challenges and all that. 18 different times. We're down to 353 hours. But they also need to film confessionals, take care of themselves, etc. This was too many people in too short of a time. Led to them forcing more votes in less time, not giving room for stuff to shift and move for the game to be interesting. The players didn't have enough time to plan and execute anything complicated. A lot of the best moments and moves in the show's history required tons of moving parts. They literally didn't have enough time to play the game. I need them to make a choice, smaller casts or less days. I think both of them lead to the season feeling more boring. 26 days isn't bad for an 18-person cast, but it is very restricting for a 24-person one. I think the central gimmick of fan voting was cute, but I don't agree with how they went about it. The questions were pretty weighted, and it didn't feel like some of the promises were properly delivered on. Specifically the live finale, I voted for it because I wanted a big celebration. I wanted people to have time to process the game, get to see the show, and talk about everything. But they didn't do a reunion? Instead, we got 5 minutes of Jeff talking to Mike White on a screen. If I had to choose between what we got or the new era finale, I would choose the new era every single time. Give the time to what matters and not random stuff. Stop interrupting the build-up. Make the live part only happen after that final vote. But if we didn't get interesting gameplay, what did we get? Celebrities and dumbass twists. Woo! Billie Eilish didn't care about the idols, and she didn't even really know about them. It was just some blatant product placement, and I hate that feeling. The Zach Brown segment was so awful it speaks for itself. In the top 10 for worst segments in the show's history. It took away so much time and I just don't care. They could have had Dua Lipa out there and I don't think I would have cared. They could have pulled Maggie Chung out of retirement and had her do an entire scene. It would have been hard for me to get invested in that because it's not the game. They could have put me out there and I would have thought it was dumb. Like, why would I be out there? But some loser I really don't know gets to cosplay as a member of the game? Fuck off. I liked Jimmy Fallon's idea that Jeff compete and the reward being more rice. No game consequences, but it led to a fun segment. I'll talk about his other addition later. Then Mr. Beast and his broad appeal leading to a lack of personality. I don't ultimately know how I feel about him as a person, but I was not excited to see him on the show. However, I think he was fine, a lot better than Zach Brown. He didn't invade that heavily and was a real supporting character. I like that he didn't try and make himself the focus. The worst part of all of this is they were so busy name dropping, it took precious time away from the players. When they say in the hands of the fan, they meant a high class, rich type of fan. A couple specific fans. Pandering to celebrities is the dumbest shit ever, and I need to move on. I cannot afford to make this video longer with another side tangent about class and politics at this point. Then there's the twists, which largely fell flat. I don't think adding a twist or two every season is that damaging, but the problem here is that they threw everything in here, and it didn't feel that thought out. I also think starting these in a milestone season, where if they don't work out, a loved player is screwed, sucks. If they introduce these in a newbie season, you can just edit the screwed player to not be that loved. You're not getting that in one of these. I'm now going to go through each of the twists and explain how I feel about them. First, the boomerang idol. A nice idea. Having to send something to another player and vote them out to get the benefit themselves, but being forced to send it to someone on a different tribe where you have zero control over them getting voted off just doesn't work in my mind. You have no agency over whether you get the idol back. The change I would suggest is either you have to give it to someone in your own tribe or introduce them later at the merge. Alternatively, don't send an idol, just make the person marked, and if that person is voted out, you get an idol. Having 3 idols at merge that can only be played on the owner who did nothing to get them is dumb. Limited what you could do with it, leading to frustration and boring gameplay. The most recent Australian season's best moment was around 2 players deciding which of them they should play an idol on. In the show's history, some of the best moments come from playing an idol on a different person. You don't get that here. Then, we didn't even get to see the boomerang aspect. Ozzy was voted out holding it like a dumbass, but it didn't go back to the player because they were out of the game. It feels so close to working, it just needed a little bit more time to be thought out. Then there's the big episode, The Blood Moon. 3 people voted out in one night. A high stakes turning point isn't the worst idea, but it came down to a lottery system. If you get placed with 2 allies, you win and survive. It didn't take any skill or strategy. People threw out all kinds of fixes back when the episode aired. The one I think would have been best is if instead of it being random which group you're in, you draw numbers 1 through 15 and then you pick which of the 3 groups you want to be in that order. Gives players more agency and ability to position yourself in the group that gives you the best shot of survival. I don't think springing 2 additional votes on them the night of would have been good. It would have led to safe gameplay where you just vote for the same person on the bottom. There's no room for gameplay in such a short amount of time. The twist was dumb as hell. A 17-person vote would have been way cooler in my opinion. Instead, we just lost 3 people who happened to pull the wrong rock. Then there was the tie to Destiny's twist where for one round you picked a partner and you won immunity / were voted off together. I like this one, especially for a returning player season where they have an existing history. There was a strategy on who you picked and targeted. I think this one works really well and is the best from a game design standpoint. We have Jimmy Fallon's dumbass self-vote and having to announce it to the whole tribe. It has been litigated to death, but it was dumb as hell. It was designed to lose and have a historic moment. If Christian won that challenge, we wouldn't know the punishment. They wanted whoever was there to lose. But if he won, it wasn't even that good. An extra vote ahead of time, before you can talk to your allies, is hardly helpful. And at worst, it's actively damaging if you vote for the person who doesn't go home. Announcing he lost his vote and getting 1 for him is too much. If he loses, just put an extra 2 in the urn for him, or take his vote and announce it. One of the most lopsided out-of-pocket twists in the show's history. They are lucky this Mr. Beast coin worked. It should not have. Rick standing up and being happy to volunteer was the best outcome. Lots of fun strategy with people debating if they should take the risk just to stop Rick from having that power. Forcing it on them was a bad idea, but just offering this coin with an amazing upside but horrible downside is an interesting design space. If nobody volunteered and this was forced on somebody, I would have hated it, but luckily that didn't happen. There was the split tribal where the immunity winner attends both. Why is this show so scared of normal votes with decent numbers? They try to get so many down to like 6 or 5 people votes. It's annoying. This did lead to the Ozzy moment of Suri not being able to tell him to play the idol. They just got lucky something interesting happened, when in most cases small votes can do the opposite. I do think there are nuggets of good ideas in some of these, and I think they were pretty favorable outcomes for twists that could have been awful throughout the course of the season. 50 wanted these twists to be the anchor to generate the interest and hype behind it, but they just hampered it. Twists can work and elevate a season, but I wish the show got out of these players' ways and had enough trust that they were going to make it interesting on their own. It feels dumb to lose a newbie to some twist they didn't think out properly. It's draining to see a returning player you love lose that way. After all that, the single most frustrating thing about this season might be Aubrey and her editing. The winner of a season can really affect my enjoyment of a season. It can bring it up or down. It is what the story has been building to, so when it doesn't make sense or it feels like someone won by being the least bad option, it reflects negatively on the entire season because the ending isn't what I wanted. It doesn't fulfill me. I feel that with Aubrey in this season. Based on what we saw, she did close to nothing. I am certain Aubrey made more moves than the Ozzy one. I am certain she was working on her relationships, building bonds with most people who went out. But they didn't show us any of that. Instead, I only saw her awkwardly shutting down Genevieve in the beginning, and not being liked by people like Coach and others. Was there just not any footage of her building relationships? We got some of Ozzy and Rick sitting together, but none of Aubrey really connecting with these other people. Based on what we saw in the show, she won because she was the least hated on that final 3 bench, in her weird multi-story season, but that story doesn't even make much sense. I lost before, but I'm content about it. I was miserable, but now I'm not. I played like Michelle. Bro, you were miserable. I don't think she really did play like Michelle either. Michelle was really good at subtle manipulation and getting herself to the end because other people wanted to sit next to her. This isn't how Aubrey got there or played the game. She won that final immunity. So either Aubrey was a really great winner and we weren't shown any of what she did, or she did next to nothing and won based off of a fine final tribal speech. Both of those suck and make for a deflating end to a season. I want winners who did stuff, and I want to see that stuff. I can only point to this vague idea that she played a solid social game. I think she won based on her legacy. She didn't do much within the game to earn this based on what we saw. Jonathan was the bigger strategy player and pushed a few votes, but was a total asshat the entire time, so he deservedly lost. I don't think he should have won. He wasn't abrasive and wasn't likable. We saw a couple examples of this. I was not so interested or invested in Jonathan's loss that it saved the ending. Low-key, if I was on this jury, I would have voted for Joe. If you made a Survivor player in a lab, you take Joe Hunter and add a little bit of self-awareness behind his actions. The jury even said as much. Every vote went through him. He was always in the loop. If he pushed 1 or 2 more votes a little bit, he would be a crazy player. Joe is already overpowered in the current meta. A man so trustworthy and loyal, bad at public speaking. He's the perfect person to sit next to in the end. It's unfair for Joe. He could play 100 times and he would get third a solid 75 times. All he needed to do was say he intentionally made it to where everyone felt the need to include him, that he downplayed his position and power within the tribe. He is such a fascinating player, a good one at getting to the end, but has a hard time understanding why what got him there makes him worthy of a win. Joe might go low-key. No, not really, but I would have voted for him. Now I want to dive into my player rankings. These are primarily how much I enjoyed and rooted for them throughout the season. It is not how well they played. So more of a character ranking than a player. These are weird on returnee seasons because I already know them. I tried to focus it on just this season, but it's absolutely impossible to do that. My 5th favorite was Coach. He's one of my all-time favorite players because he's the biggest character. He makes for great TV. Everything that came out of this mouth was insane. Made 0 sense and came out of nowhere. I loved it. He's delusional and unaware. It makes him such a fun person to watch. There were countless videos fact-checking him, talking about the stone monks and whatever, and it was just peak entertainment because he didn't know what he was saying. Was I rooting for Coach at any point? Yeah, I was about to say no, but yeah, I was. I wanted him to go far and win. I want to live in a world where someone as unhinged as Coach has won this show. It would be so funny. Just being able to think about that before I go to bed would be an amazing feeling. Coach is different from a lot of the other delusional people from the show. It's just so innocent in his self-righteousness. He isn't awful to others, just annoying as hell. His Boo episode was amazing. Him sitting there making up haikus, doing his martial arts. He might be the best casting choice in the show's history. Tied for number 4 is Kyle, Savannah, Q, and Genevieve. All gone too soon. I talked about them all already. Rest in peace. I hope you all come back. Third, we have R-I-Z-G-O-D, Rizgod, baby. It's Rizzo. I love Rizzo so much. Such a goofy dude, but legitimately good at the game. Has a great sense of things. I've thought about playing Survivor my entire life. I always wanted to play like Jeremy or Parv. But if I was going to go play with my current skill set and life experiences, I could only dream of a scenario where I'm half as good as Rizzo. His philosophy of holding an idol, even if it results in him being voted out, is how I've looked at the game in idols. Your goal isn't to make it one more week, your goal is to win. He has used an idol over 2 seasons like I always thought people should. Plus, I'm slightly goofy, not the best socially, and wouldn't be the best in challenges. Rizzo was entertaining and played a great game. Before the season, I was telling others left, right, and central that they should watch out for Rizzo, and was glad he showed he still knows the game and positioning. It is kind of awesome he lost in Fire instead of Final Tribal, so I can gaslight myself into saying he would have won if he was given more time to learn Fire between the seasons. I see myself in R-I-Z-G-O-D, Rizgod. Second, Suri. Who doesn't love Suri? I knew going in, it was 6th or 5th place for her. The best strategy is to make her want to keep you around and nump her near the end. But she was a glowing player and a highlight of every vote. She's lacking threat management, but I don't care. She just seemed so lovely and genuine, able to whip a vote and control the game unlike anyone else, up until that point where she can't properly win out and make the end. She makes people feel safe. She makes me feel safe. An all-time legend of the game, happy she won the 100 grand and had a blast watching her play. And now, my favorite player from Season 50, Rick Devens. I was not the biggest Devens head the first time around. It's a War Dog fan you're talking to here. I liked him but didn't love him. Then Devens was the shining light this time around. He was so happy to be out there playing hard and big, taking big risks. It's the type of player that makes me come to the show and watch. Devens was the most fun person to watch. Go big or go home, and he really embodied that. I've covered most of my big thoughts. There are some small things I have opinions on, but I don't need to go into every little detail. I will say it was annoying as hell pretty much having this season spoiled by everyone agreeing Aubrey was going to win weeks out, when it didn't really make any sense. If you know who wins, don't be predicting shit and don't be on Edgic, that's lame. Not every season featuring returning players can be Cambodia and heroes versus villains. And 50 was not either of those. I really wonder how this season will age, because right now I'm just baffled by it. This was the first season where US production really tested my patience. It might be because I also happened to dive into Australian Survivor while this was airing, but I'm left numb after writing this. A middling season of Survivor, I find enough time to tide me over. There are worse seasons, but they're certainly better. I'm just frustrated at the show focusing on the aspects I find least compelling. I don't have an official US season ranking. I watched so many of them back in late middle school, early high school. I can't say anything more than a general vibe after a couple of years. But I would guess this is in the 30 to 35-ish range out of the 42 I have watched of the US season. Jeff, if you watch this and manage to get to this point, try and focus on your large personalities and let them be the center point. The best part of Survivor is the people. You don't need to unleash every twist ever, and think them through a little bit more. This video is the first of its kind for me. If you enjoyed, please subscribe, like, and comment. It would be helpful. While I normally focus on movies, which I'll get back to next, I do want to dabble in reality TV from time to time because I also love it. I could see the review being a staple with Survivor seasons. I'm also working on a pretty big project of watching and reviewing every Australian season, so expect that in the next 6 months if I finish all of those. It might sound lame, but comments really do help with my motivation to keep making these, so if you enjoyed, pop down there and let me know. I hope you did enjoy. Thanks for watching.